making cinnamon baked French toast, and it's a great breakfast for a bunch of girls. It's really easy to make. It's just a one-dish thing to throw together and stick in the oven. I've got a loaf of sourdough bread, and I'm just tearing it into pieces. All right, now I'll make the egg mixture. I have 8 eggs in a bowl, and I'm gonna add 2 cups of whole milk, and just a half a cup of heavy cream. Just adds a little richness without making it too heavy. And then for a little sweetness, half a cup of sugar, and a 1/4 cup of packed brown sugar. The brown sugar just adds a nice richness to it. And the essential ingredient, a couple of tablespoons of vanilla extract. I love vanilla extract, can you tell? All right, now I'll just whisk this together. Oh, it smells like vanilla. And then I just pour this over the torn bread pieces. All right, yummy, yummy. Now I'm gonna make a topping for the baked French toast, and it's gonna give it a little extra sweetness, a little bit of crunch on top. I'm starting with half a cup of flour, and then I'll add half a cup of packed brown sugar. I'll add a teaspoon of cinnamon, and then some grated nutmeg. Oh, it smells so good, yummy. And then finally, a little bit of salt. Now I'll mix that together just a bit. And now I have a stick of very cold butter. And then I'll use my pastry cutter to just blend this together. You want the butter to be cold so the end result will sort of be little pebbles. All right, this is all combined. Now I'll just pour this mixture over the torn bread pieces. Now this needs to bake for about an hour at 350. While this is in the oven, I'm gonna go get a little gardening done. Oh, this looks so good, and it smells even better. And I hear the voices of little girls. You're finally out of bed. I can't believe it. Good morning.
Oh, neat. Cassie, you want some syrup? Tell me what.
A shortcut puff pastry quiche. So I'm making the egg mixture, which is a great way to start any quiche recipe. I beat some eggs, and I'm adding some salt and pepper, and then a good amount of half and half, and then sour cream. Nice pile of sour cream. And then I just need to whisk this mixture until it is completely combined. I think the magical thing about quiche is that you can serve it absolutely any time of day. I really love this puff pastry version because all you have to do is thaw the puff pastry. You don't have to make the pastry yourself. That is the egg mixture. So speaking of puff pastry, I have 2 sheets. And again, this is frozen puff pastry. And I'm just gonna lay it right into half of this baking dish. I'm gonna overlap 2 sheets. All right, I think that looks good. Just kind of bring whatever's hanging over the sides down so that it's right around the top rim of the pan. All right, so the pastry is ready. Now I'm gonna lay on a bed of cheese. This is grated pepper jack cheese. It adds just a tiny bit of spice, and it's really, really creamy. I sauteed some leaves of Swiss chard. I just took them off the stems and sauteed them in a little butter, salted them, peppered them, but you can do kale, you can do spinach, any kind of dark leafy green is perfect for this. So now this egg mixture gets poured all over the top. Emphasis on over the top. Oh gosh, I love quiche. All right, so for color and flavor, I'm gonna add some little grape tomatoes. They're cut in half. I'm gonna arrange them cut side up. I'm sorry, but tricolor cherry tomatoes just make everything look prettier. So I have this beautiful fresh dill, which is a great herb for eggy breakfast dishes. And I'm just doing a little sprinkle. You can put as little or as much as you like. So for baking, there are actually 2 stages. I'm gonna lightly cover the pan for the first stage, and it's gonna cook at 375 degrees for 20 minutes. Then I'll take the foil off and let it bake for another 20 minutes. See what this looks like in here. It sure does smell good. Oh, gosh, it's so beautiful. Taking the time to arrange those tomatoes so that the cut side is up is really worth it. Now, unfortunately, it's always best to let quiche sit for 10 or 15 minutes before you slice it. So I'm gonna sit here and stare at its beauty and try to be patient. I am making a breakfast burrito casserole. So I added a layer of frozen breakfast potatoes, and I browned some breakfast sausage, and the sausage went right over the potatoes. So basically this casserole has everything that would go inside the breakfast burrito. So I'll make the egg mixture, which of course is important. I've got 4 eggs, and I'll add some milk. I'm just gonna put the sour cream right into the egg mixture. And then I've got some diced red bell pepper, sliced green onion, some seasoned salt, and plenty of black pepper. And then I have 2 different kinds of cheeses to add. Sharp cheddar, and then I have some grated pepper jack. I'll just add a little bit to the egg mixture, and then I'm gonna save the rest for the top of the casserole. And mix this until it's totally combined. And now this egg and cheese mixture gets poured right over the sausage and potatoes. I'm gonna top this with all this pepper jack cheese. I love breaking out the jarred pickled jalapenos, and I'll just arrange them over the top. So now I'm gonna cover up the casserole. And this is one of those wonderful breakfast casseroles that you can put in the fridge unbaked for up to 2 days. And then when it's breakfast time and you're ready to make the burritos, let me show you how it all comes together. So first, I'll throw the casserole into a 350-degree oven, bake it for 25 minutes, remove the foil, and put it back in for another 20 minutes. Then everyone can scoop out some of the casserole onto a warm tortilla, spoon on some salsa, roll the burrito, and that's a delicious and easy holiday breakfast. Sausage kale strata is technically a breakfast dish, but it actually makes the perfect dinner. It's got it all in one pan: bread and meat, cheese, eggs, even vegetables. It is absolutely delicious, and it's a great make-ahead meal. Now, I've just been browning some sausage patties in a big old skillet. I'll chop them up in a little bit, but I wanted to get them out of the pan and let them cool just a bit first. I've got a dozen eggs, and I'll add 2 cups of whole milk. And then to give it some nice richness, half a cup of half and half. Now this needs plenty of seasoning, so I'll sprinkle in salt and a good amount of pepper. And I'll just whisk this together. Okay, now I want to give it a little bit of herbiness. So I've got some fresh oregano, and I'll strip some leaves off. Any herbs you have in the fridge will do. You can add chives or basil, parsley, anything that's green and fragrant. I'll just chop it up really fine. Okay, now I'll sprinkle this in. Just whisk it in. Okay, the egg mixture's all done. I'll pop this over here for now. Now back to the skillet. It's still hot from cooking the sausage. I have a whole bunch of torn kale pieces, and I'll just let the kale saute slowly. I don't want to cook it too fast. Now while the kale cooks, I'll just grab some mushrooms that I've been roasting in the oven. Roasting the mushrooms gives them such amazing color and flavor, and it couldn't be simpler to do. I just threw a whole bunch of quartered white mushrooms onto a baking tray, drizzled over some olive oil, sprinkled them with salt and pepper. Then I got them into roast at 425 degrees for 15 minutes. I'll just set the mushrooms down to cool, and I'll get all the other ingredients ready for the strata. I'm gonna chop up the sausage patties. Of course, you can use just regular sausage and crumble it up, but I really like having big chunks of sausage in with the big chunks of bread. I think this is such a pretty recipe. Big chunks of bread, big chunks of sausage, lots of green from the kale. And with that, I'm ready to assemble the strata. I've got a casserole dish and I smeared the inside with butter. And then I have a whole bunch of cubes of bread. This is just a nice crusty French loaf, and I cut it into 1-inch squares. Now I'll add a layer of the cooked kale. It's cool enough, I can just use my hands and just sprinkle it all over the bread. Just beautiful. And now a layer of the roasted mushrooms. I love roasted mushrooms. They are a real weakness for me. I just cannot stay away from them. Okay, that's enough for the first layer. Now a layer of sausage. Stratas are so versatile, and as long as you have a loaf of bread and eggs, you can make a strata. And now for cheese, of course. You can do cheddar, cheddar jack, pepper jack, even Swiss is delicious. And now I'll just repeat those layers one more time. Now I just have to pour this delicious herby egg mixture over the top. The key is just to go slow. You want it to totally cover every piece of bread. Now you could just put this straight into the oven and bake it. It would still be really delicious. But stratas are always best if you can give them time in the fridge. The bread has time to soak up all the liquid and the flavors marry and meld. It's always better if you can have patience. All right, now I'm just gonna cover the pan with foil, pop it in the fridge, and it'll be all ready for dinner time. Then all I have to do tonight is get it in to bake at 350 degrees. After 30 minutes, take off the foil and give the strata a little more time in the oven. When the strata is hot and the top is golden brown and slightly crisp, it's done and ready to serve up. So I'll put a big heaping helping onto everyone's plate, add some grapes on the side, and there will be a lot of happy Drummonds around here. Breakfast casseroles have always been a hit in the Drummond household, and there's nothing wrong with baking a big one in a casserole dish, but I've found more and more that I like making the small ones, because you can decide when you serve them. I keep them in the freezer in a bag, and depending on how many people I need to serve, I just take them out, nuke them, and breakfast is ready. Sometimes I do a sausage version, but I'm gonna do a ham version this time. Talk about delicious. First thing I gotta do is whisk up all these eggs. I cracked 20 eggs into the bowl. Of course, you can make as many or as few as you want to. So I'll add some salt and pepper. This is a lot of eggs. The ham is pretty salty, so I won't go too heavy on the salt, but I definitely want to have plenty of black pepper in there. I like to give eggs a little bit of a chili flavor, so I've got some chili powder. It also adds just a tiny bit of heat. Okay, all of this ham goes in. I've got some really finely diced onion. For a little green, I've got some diced green bell pepper. And you can have some fun with this. You can use yellow bell pepper, red, anything you've got in the produce drawer. And cheese, of course. Big pile of grated sharp cheddar. Okay, now I gotta stir all this together. And the rest of the recipe is even easier. The first step is to get the mixture into sprayed pans. Bake them at 350 for 15 minutes. When the time's up, they'll be puffy and just barely set. When they're cool, they're flash frozen on a sheet pan for 45 minutes. Then they go into a bag and back into the freezer. And that's it. Sausage and grits casserole. So I've been browning some pork breakfast sausage in a skillet with some red onion and 3 colors of bell pepper. All right, so that is all cooked. I'm gonna turn the heat off of the sausage and peppers, and I'm gonna finish up the grits. So I'm using quick cooking grits, and I just basically cooked them according to the package instructions. So I'm gonna make them a little more delicious by adding some cheddar cheese, some cream cheese, which is softened, and then some butter, of course. And this is optional always, but a few dashes of hot sauce is always good in grits. So I'm just gonna stir until the cream cheese and the cheese is melted, the butter is worked in, and the grits are even more amazing than they were when I started. Okay, so I'm gonna turn the heat off of the grits. The cheeses are all melted, the butter's melted. So to help them set in the casserole, I'm gonna whisk in 3 beaten eggs. And I often do this whenever I'm gonna bake the grits, just to help them kind of solidify and set. I'm just gonna pour the whole skillet full into the pan of grits. So it's just easy to kind of mix them all together. All right, I'm gonna pour this whole mixture into the buttered dish. Oh my gosh, this looks good. Okay, so I have the rest of this grated cheddar, and I'll drop it right on top. Alrighty, and then I'm gonna cover it with foil. And for the first stage, I'm gonna cook it at 350 for 25 minutes, and then I'll take the foil off the pan, cook it for another 10, and then I'll let it sit for 10 minutes before I serve it. So, go in with a big old spoon, get plenty of cheese on top. This is my kind of breakfast. Oh, I'm making an Herbalicious breakfast casserole. It starts with a bed of torn up onion rolls. These are just regular onion rolls that you buy in the bread aisle of the supermarket. And I have some other things to add to the casserole. I have jarred roasted red peppers, and I'm just cutting them into strips. The next ingredient is chunks of cream cheese. When the casserole eventually bakes in the oven, the clumps of cream cheese just kind of soften and melt. Next, about a cup of grated mozzarella. I'm gonna dot the top with pieces of butter. Trust me, this butter kind of soaks into the bread. Now it's time for the egg mixture. I've got 10 eggs, and I'll pour in 2 cups of milk. This is an Herbalicious breakfast casserole. So I'm gonna stir up a little jar of pesto, and I'll add probably 3 heaping spoonfuls. I think that should be enough. Now I really wanna up the Herbalicious factor. So I've got some fresh parsley and fresh oregano, a little bit of salt and pepper, and I am gonna stir this up. So now it's time to pour it all over. I kind of start by going around the edge. You want it to slowly soak into all those chunks of bread. Okay, now I'm gonna cover it with plastic wrap and wrap it tightly in foil for the freezer. And while I do that, let me tell you the cooking and serving instructions. I cook the casserole from frozen with the plastic off, but still covered in foil at 350 degrees for 45 minutes. Then I remove the foil and give it another 10 minutes so the top gets crisp and golden. Then it's just a matter of taking it out, cutting it up, and serving it. Herbalicious and very delicious. Well, I have an idea for a Thanksgiving breakfast casserole that is so scrumptious. It has all the flavors of Thanksgiving, but you can make it the night before, which makes it very easy, and it's just the thing to eat for breakfast on Turkey Day. I started by cutting up some cinnamon raisin English muffins. This casserole has a nice savory sweet flavor. I'm gonna check what's in the skillet. I've got a mixture of diced Granny Smith apples and diced onion. I also added some fresh sage just to really up the Thanksgiving flavor. And I sauteed it until it's soft. So I'm gonna turn off the heat and just let that sit. And now I'll whip up the egg mixture. Got a bunch of eggs for the casserole, and I'll start by mixing them up a bit. And to make them a little creamy, I'll add some whole milk and half. Callie, by the way, is a friend of mine. She has a store right across the street from the Merc. She and her husband, Joey, are such a sweet couple. I love to make breakfast casseroles the night before Thanksgiving. It's really great to have it ready to go in the fridge when you wake up. and just pop it in the oven. We don't wind up eating Thanksgiving dinner until later in the day, so it's nice to start the day with a little something to eat. Okay, while I keep mixing this up, I've got time for another question.
Hi, Ree. If I'm cooking my own Thanksgiving dinner, what's the first thing I should do?
Oh, Mackenzie, so you're making your first Thanksgiving meal. Well, my first piece of advice would be run for the hills. I'm just kidding. Actually, making your own Thanksgiving feast is so fun and so rewarding. The first thing you need to do is decide what you're gonna make. From there, you make the grocery list, then you do your shopping, and then you can plan out each day before Thanksgiving. If you make lists and prep, you will have so much fun. Pen and paper are definitely your friend. Good luck, you can totally do this. Now I'm gonna go ahead and assemble the breakfast casserole. I have a buttered baking dish, and I'm gonna add half of the English muffins first. Now I've got some cooked breakfast sausage. This is sage sausage, but it would also be delicious if you used maple sausage. Scrumptious. Okay, I'm spreading that out. And then I'm gonna grab the skillet with the onions and the apples, and I'll add half of that. I use so many apples on Thanksgiving Day between this casserole, the Thanksgiving dressing, apple pie. I mean, I don't even want to think about how many apples I go through. Now I have some freshly grated white cheddar. Any cheese works. You can do sharp cheddar, you can do pepper jack, or just plain Monterey Jack. Okay, now I'm gonna do the same thing a second time. Now all that's left is the egg mixture, and I'll pour it really slowly over the top. In the fridge overnight, those English muffins soak up all of this wonderful custard. This is a delicious casserole. I have learned the hard way through the years that if I don't have something ready for breakfast on Thanksgiving morning, my family will eat the Thanksgiving meal before any guests show up. Okay, I'm gonna cover this with plastic wrap. Now, Callie, on Thanksgiving morning, this is all you have to do. Take the casserole out of the fridge 20 minutes before cooking, remove the plastic wrap, replace it with foil, and bake it at 350 degrees for 35 minutes. Then take the foil off and cook it for another 15 minutes. When it's golden brown and slightly crisp, it's done. And all it needs is a sprinkle of chopped parsley. I'm on my last recipe of make-ahead meals for my family, and this one is for breakfast. It's called a Sleepin' omelet, and it's named that for a reason. Basically, you whip this up, stash it in the fridge overnight, and then the next morning you pop it in the oven, and you've got a hot, delicious breakfast without even lifting a finger. Now, the basis of the Sleepin' omelet is bread. I'm using ciabatta. This recipe was one that my mom and her friends used to make when I was growing up, and they actually used onion rolls. That is really delicious too. Basically, you can use whatever bread you have, French bread. I've even used bagels before, and that is delicious. Now, for this casserole, you've got to have cheese. I've got a hunk of sharp cheddar, and I'll just grate it up. Lad and Bryce have been busy feeding cattle this morning, and that's pretty much what it's like on a ranch every morning. It's always busy, there's always something to do, and for that reason, having make-ahead breakfast is something I really appreciate.
Hey, Snip, how are you, man? Whew, need to brush you. Hey, good job today. Thanks for your help this morning.
No problem.
Appreciate it. Now just go unsaddle my horse for me. I'll get it.
Okay, now I grated a whole bunch of cheese, and I'll just sprinkle it over the bread. Now, the ingredient I absolutely love in this casserole is cream cheese. I'm just tearing off big chunks. It always results in deliciousness. Now, if that weren't decadent enough, I've got some butter cut into bits, and I'll just dot the top. It is so yummy. Now, this is basically a French toast casserole or a strata, which means you need an egg mixture to hold it all together. I've got 10 eggs that I beat up, and now I'll move forward with the mixture. So I'm gonna whisk a couple of cups of milk into the 10 beaten eggs, toss in 2 tablespoons of dehydrated onions, half a teaspoon of dried mustard, a dash of cayenne pepper, the same amount of salt, some pepper, a teaspoon of chopped chives for even more flavor, and whisk it all together. Now I'm just gonna get all this egg mixture poured on, and then I'll cover it and pop it in the fridge overnight. But let me show you what happens to the Sleepin' omelet tomorrow. Okay, it goes into a 325-degree oven for about 45 minutes. Then the foil comes off, the oven goes up to 350, and the casserole gets another 10 to 15 minutes. Then the Sleepin' omelet is done and ready to be heaped onto plates for a hungry ranch crew, or a hungry city crew. And that's what I call a great breakfast. I think that's my plate. I'm making a tater tot casserole for tomorrow. It is so wonderful. It's an all-in-one main course. It's got a great shortcut ingredient, and it's make ahead. Check, check, and check. I'm gonna assemble the casserole today and bake it tomorrow. I'm just browning some breakfast sausage with some finely diced onion. I'm gonna let the sausage cook all the way through. And while it does, I'm gonna grab that shortcut ingredient. Frozen tater tots. So easy. All I need to do is get them into a buttered baking dish. This perfect layer of tater tots is gonna get topped with the brown sausage and onions. And it's fine that this is hot. It's gonna have a chance to cool down before I add the other ingredients. Once the casserole bakes, those tater tots just turn into potatoes. You would never know they were frozen. Okay, that is all the sausage. Now I'll start working on the egg mixture. This casserole has a lot of cheese, so I'm gonna grate up some cheddar and some Monterey Jack. It's probably the cheese combination that I use the most in my kitchen. Okay, that's enough cheddar. I'll start grating the pepper jack. Love pepper jack cheese, it's so creamy and I love the spice. Okay, that's it for the cheese. Get it out of here. I've got 4 eggs that I cracked into the pitcher, and I'll add a cup of milk. It's whole milk just to make the whole thing a little more rich. And speaking of rich, a little bit of half and half, just about half a cup or so. Now the sausage is really flavorful and plenty salty, but I'm gonna add just a little bit of seasoned salt, about a 1/4 teaspoon. And for some spice, a little cayenne pepper. Really simple. And then I'll whisk this together. Okay, that is nice and mixed. So I'll add some green and red bell pepper. I seeded it and pulled out the membranes, and then I diced them really fine. Okay, the last thing to add to the egg mixture is half of this cheese. The other half is gonna go on top of the casserole. I'll give it a quick stir. And then this beautiful concoction gets poured over the sausage, which is cool by now. And look at all that chunky wonderfulness. Make sure it's all even. And then the rest of this cheese goes on top. This is a cheesy, cheesy dish. Now I've just gotta cover it with foil, stash it in the fridge overnight, and tomorrow when it comes to baking and serving, well, that's gonna be a cinch. I'll get the casserole into the oven at 350 degrees for 25 minutes. Then I'll take the foil off and bake it for another 20 minutes. Then when it's hot and bubbling, I'll get it out and onto the counter. And everyone will have a lovely, hearty helping. Oh boy, check out all the tater tots and sausagey, oniony, eggy cheesiness. Fantastic.